Hello, everyone. I'm Lacey. That was Pickles. And you are watching Reptales. So, recently I was reading this fabulous book by Dr. Paul Koudounaris called Faithful Until Death. And it's like this whole thing about the history of pet cemeteries and pet burials in America and Europe. Super interesting. But there was a section on unique animal burials. One of the ones that caught my attention was a burial for a horned lizard named Ol' Rip. So today I want to tell you the legend of Ol' Rip, the horned lizard. Now, a couple weeks ago I had a video talking about horned lizards, so I thought this was kind of appropriate. You already have some backstory on horned lizards. If you haven't watched that video, go ahead and watch it after this one so you have a little more info on horned lizards. And let's get started. So all of this started out back in 1897, long time ago, in West Texas, in a town called Eastland, Eastland County, Texas. So back in the 1800s, 1897, this little kid named Will Wood, WW, little Will Wood, he was 4, and he found a cute little horned lizard. They called them horny toads, like I used to call them when I was a kid. But they found a cute little bitty horned lizard, and he thought it was really neat. Now, his dad, Wood Sr., he was one of the people in charge of building the new Eastland County Courthouse. And in West Texas, back in the day, there was this kind of wives' tale, this theory that horned lizards could go and survive a really, really long time in hibernation and just like chill, right? Be really low key, kind of go dormant for a long time. So when they were building this courthouse, they wanted to test it out. So they took this lizard and they named him Rip Van Winkle, Rip for short. And they took this lizard and they put him in a time capsule that they buried in the cornerstone of the Eastland County Courthouse to be unearthed at some later date. So this lizard has been put in the time capsule, and 31 years go by, and they decide, you know what, we're gonna tear down this courthouse, we're gonna build a new courthouse in Eastland. And someone remembered that they had that lizard in the cornerstone time capsule, and so they were telling everyone, hey, we're gonna check this lizard, we're gonna see what happened. And 1,500 people showed up to view the spectacle, and it was so hard, like they had a hard time getting the time capsule open. But they get it open, and the guy reaches in, pulls out this dusty, skinny lizard, and allegedly, this lizard leg twitches. And over the next several hours, this lizard was waking up and moving around. And after 31 years, this lizard, allegedly the same lizard, this lizard was alive. And this ended up being huge news, national news, in the late 20s, which is crazy. They took this lizard on a national tour of the United States where different naturalists and professionals debated whether or not this lizard could have survived 31 years in a box. Oh, hi. And there was a Bible in the time capsule, so some people were saying, well, he survived by a miracle because there was a Bible in there. Take that for what you will, but, there's that. And on Mr. Rip, on his tour of the United States, he did get to meet President Calvin Coolidge. They took him to the White House where he met President Coolidge, and they had a stare down for like a minute because Cal wanted to see who blinked first. President Coolidge blinked first. So Rip met President Coolidge, which was, that's pretty cool. President Coolidge declined to touch the lizard, but he kind of nudged it with his glasses to be like, lizard. So about 11 months after he was taken out of his capsule, Ol' Rip unfortunately passed away of pneumonia in 1928. Super sad, poor little guy, but his story doesn't end there. Nay. Mr. Rip was interred in a satin-lined glass-topped casket, a tiny one, provided by the American Casket Company, and he was put on display in the new Eastland Courthouse. And then, a couple decades later, in 1962, this little casket with poor Mr. Rip was stolen and put up for ransom, and the ransomer was asking for $10,000, which would be $105,000 in today's money. You know, he ransomed this lizard for the safe return. So they did a citywide search, and eventually, a little casket with Old Rip was found, and he was returned to his place in the courthouse. None the worse for wear. Later, that same year as his kidnapping, thieving, ransoming, later that year, the future Governor Connolly, which, if that name sounds familiar, he was in the car with President Kennedy when Kennedy was assassinated. He got hit by the magic bullet. That Governor Connolly. He went to Eastland, Texas when he was on his bid for governor, which he would eventually win. And he went and he picked up Old Rip from his little casket, and one of his legs broke off. 3-legged lizard. Corpse. It slightly matters, because later, in 1972, he was stolen again. Like, for a courthouse, they had some pretty crap security for their star. So he gets stolen again and ransomed again. And allegedly, miraculously, they find him again. But there's some issues with this recovered Old Rip. This new Old Rip had 4 legs, not 3. He was missing. Well, he had the leg that he had lost when he was handled by Governor Connolly. And they keep saying, nope, this is the real Old Rip. This is him, all right. It's not. Some guy put up a $5,000 bounty. Like, if you can prove that this is Old Rip for realsies, I will give you $5,000. To this day, since 1972, that prize has not been claimed. So today, in the Eastland County Courthouse, in Eastland, Texas, it is an imposter horned lizard. So there you have it. That is the story of the most famous horned lizard in America and American history. I'm a little disappointed that I had never heard this story until I read it in Dr. Paul's book, because how fantastic, how crazy. There was this horned lizard fever going on. People couldn't get enough. It became such a problem that the Texas population of horned lizards was being negatively affected from people trying to get their own horned lizards to keep, which, as discussed in the horned lizard video, they're not great pets because they live on a diet of ants. Now, do I think that he survived for 31 years in a box? Depends on the quality of the box, in my opinion. It was the late 1800s. Clearly, this courthouse was only good for 31 years, and so maybe wasn't built to best quality. So perhaps, the time capsule wasn't built to last either, which means it's entirely possible that some ants could have gotten in to this time capsule for him to eat. Moisture could have gotten in, and any moisture, their bodies are designed to suck it up so they can ingest it. Technically, depending on conditions, it might have been possible for him to survive. Do I realistically think he survived for 31 years in a lightless box? Not necessarily, no. I think ultimately there was probably a little bit of hand-waving, a little bit of a switcheroo, so I don't think he was the real Rip. And for him to have died of pneumonia a year after his initial exhumation is not surprising either, because he was probably in the 20s not being kept in an optimal environment. But there you have it. I hope you liked this little video. And if you have questions, put them in the comment below. If you have suggestions for another really cool story or video ideas, let me know. And additionally, if anyone, next month is November. Next month is time for the NARBC show in St. Louis. If you're going to that show in St. Louis, let me know, because I'm definitely going. I'm going to be there, and I would love to meet you and hang out. So yeah, good time. But as always, friends, never stop learning, because the mind is a terrible thing to waste. See ya. So, he meets President. Wow, it's a big spider. Dad, cool. Dad, there's a big spider right there, like directly in front of where I'm sitting. It's huge.